Welcome, all you super sleuth advocates. Or if you don't feel like you're a super sleuth advocate now, you will by the end of this live. Because today we're going to uncover some valuable information that most parents and, dare I say, many advocates don't even know it exists. Because in hidden places, we are going to be looking for some clues and get some inside details, some specific things that you can use when you advocate for your child. So imagine being able to know exactly what the state special ed director just told all the special ed directors in the state what they need to be doing. Now, wouldn't that be good information to have before you walk in to your next IEP meeting? And if this is intriguing, stay tuned because you're about to become a super sleuth advocate. Yes, yes. Ooh. You probably know that there's a Department of Education in your state. And then there's probably this Department of Special Education. And it might be called different things depending on the state you live in. However, this State Department website has some secrets that you will be amazed by. So let me show you, say hi, and let me enlarge my screen over here because, what we're going to do is we're going to first take a trip to Boise, Idaho. And we're going to look at the special ed website. So let me share my screen. Now, one of the first things, let me go back here to the actual beginning of the special ed website. Now, you might get distracted, right? There's menu, search language, there's these other categories over here. I want you to first just look at the language that's on your State Department Special Ed website because you might be able to use this language in your next IEP meeting. So look at here. It says, we provide guidance and resources to our state's educators and families so they can engage in the vital work of providing Idaho students with disabilities the opportunity to learn, grow, and reach their potential. So, you know what I like to do as an advocate is take that exact language that the State Department is publicly putting out there and just casually drop that language in the conversation during an IEP meeting. So what could I say here? So you could say, I understand, and I'm just so thrilled that our State Department is proactive and they see the need for this vital work of families, educators, all together receiving different guidance and resources. And later in the IEP meeting, I'm going to share some resources that I think would be so helpful for all of us here. So I don't know, that wasn't so great, but you get the idea is we want to use some of that language from your special ed website and State Department and use that during IEP meetings. So that's just one simple thing. But if you look down here, there's different things you can find out when the Medicaid Advisory Committee is, different announcements, manifestation, determination, a practice guide. I like how they call it a practice guide. I think that means this is best practice, but sometimes I think districts are practicing how to do manifestation determination meetings. Anyway, there is a lot of information. And so you want to take time because you want to be familiar. And like I said, your State Department's going to look different. But look at over here what we have. And let's see, where is the SISTA? Where did it go? So I'm going to go to the Idaho Training Clearinghouse. I click on the right thing. Now, in here, you will find some specific things for special ed directors, paraprofessionals, parents, yay, and principals. And again, your State Department website's going to look different, but chances are they have some kind of a calendar that tells you when different events are going on. So right here, I noticed that there was a special ed directors webinar on Wednesday, the 28th. So if I click on that, I'll get the title. And look, you get the recording. So you can listen and see what special ed directors are being told to do from the State Department and see if in fact that is happening in your school district. So this was a webinar that was the end of August, and one of the big topics was SLD updates for specific learning disabilities. And so if you want, you could take time to watch the video. The other thing that I like here is they also give you the slides. So sometimes that's like quicker to glance through and kind of open up. So let's see, I'm going to have to change my screen share here. So say hello, let us know what's happening in your world. And I'd also love to know, do you ever delve into the innards of your State Department's website? So let me stop sharing that. And now I'm going to share a different screen. So let's see here. So these are the slides that were from the end of August webinar for special ed directors in our state. So like I said, sometimes you can just go through and see the agenda and it's like, is any of this, popping out like, yeah, I want to learn more, or like, no thanks, I can close this and go on with my life. So I wanted to show, because Idaho had some changing with the wording about identifying kids with SLD. So this was a major topic. The other thing that you can do is not only find out about what directors are being told, but you can also find grant money. So, it surprises me that there are times when your State Department will initiate some kind of grants or, a call for proposals from districts or whatever for additional funding. And there are times when your district forgets about it and they don't apply for this money. So one of the things that I love finding out on your State Department website is what kind of grants are being offered for districts. And there's usually a specific purpose, right? Like for these grants, they're talking about helping using the funds, districts could use the funds to train the teachers in this new process for identifying kids with specific learning disabilities. However, last year there was grant money in Idaho for districts to train teachers on the new restraint and seclusion law, which we are happy that we got something here in Idaho. So anyway, there's a lot of information that you want to be gathering. So let's go back, because I'm going to show you some other things that we can find out. And it does just take time to explore, but once you get into the groove, it's a little bit easier to find things. So I'm going to go back here to the basic page. And one of the things that you can have access to is your state special education manual. And I really encourage families to download an electronic copy of your state manual. So you'll always have it on your computer. You can look it up, and if you're like me, it's like I still like paper copies of things. So hard copies, I guess, right? So this is Idaho's special ed manual. And then the other tip I have for you is, if you have something that's like 300 pages, I like to put tabs in for the different chapters and write on the tabs what that name of that section is. So if you're a paper person, you can also get your manual printed at your local office supply store. And actually, we got a new manual just adopted a couple of weeks ago that I have to take and get printed. So that's the other thing. When you go on the websites, you can check and see, make sure that you're getting the latest and greatest. And then here they have additional resource materials. So you can click on one of these from chapter 4, and then you have all of these other really wonderful things, resources at your fingertips, like, let's see here, eligibility decision quick guide. They have the functional behavior assessment. They call it practice guide. I think that's so funny. Invitation to meeting. There's districts that need this one. Anyway, so what I see is it really can be a go-to source for a lot of resources, and most state departments websites will also have the federal resources. So for sure, right, you want to be able to know what the IDEA says, but when you're looking at state resources, it can be really helpful. The other thing is, I was going to show you, is if we go back here, let me see if I can get back here. So this is our training clearinghouse, and not only is it the place where special ed directors can find information, but there's a lot of resources and classes going on that are mainly made for teachers. However, you can go back in there too, and you can find things. So let's see. I was trying to see if we saw something exciting. They're going through some file reviews, so there's a lot of stuff on that. But you could also look down here, enhancing family voice. Again, you might find some language in here this is a PDF that you could use, during a meeting. These are upcoming webinars that are going to be happening, the past ones. So if you're looking just for webinars, you can come here, supporting kids with sensory impairment. So what, and I know not everybody feels the same way that I do. However, I'm a retired teacher, so I love learning more from the educator perspective. But always as a parent, I wanted to know, what the scoop was that the teachers were hearing. And so for you as a parent, it really helps you to see, when I look at all the behavior training that's happening for our teachers, it all seems to be pretty behaviorist based. And it's like, I'll pause here. Then that's like, I wonder if I need to have a conversation with the people at the training center to see if we couldn't have some neuroscience based kind of behavior support for teachers. So, like I said, not everybody is as much of a geek as I am. I just think it's really, really helpful. So let me know, what resources do you have in your community or your State Department website, or even your school district? I mean, that's the other thing, right? Is to go to your individual school district website. And find there, like what the district policies are, whatever. The other thing that I think most states have like a public place where you can see state complaints that have been filed, due process hearings. There's about 11 states, and Idaho is one of those, that does not have something really easily accessible on their website. However, I used to live in Colorado, and I know Colorado has it. So let's take a moment and go to, let's make sure I have this, Colorado State Department of Special Ed. So here, again, there's a place for special ed directors, right? So again, you want to check out some of the things that special ed directors are finding. However, I want to go to dispute resolution over here on the right and click that. And then you can either find out more information about how to file them, some other helpful resources, but you can also find, if you look over here again on the far right, decisions. So that's what I like to scope out. So there are due process decisions. There were 2 so far for this year, and then state complaint decisions. And what you can do is you can click on here and you can read the PDF of the actual state complaint. So let me stop this. So the reason why you would want to go and see what previous state complaint decisions were, if you're filing a state complaint, is so you can see, one, how did the state complaint investigator decide this decision? What evidence did they use? You can go into the decision and see the regulations or the statute that the complaint officer used to support their decision. So there's so many good things here. Now, what helps is if you're the decisions are grouped by issues. Some states do it that way. Because then if you're filing a state complaint about ESY, you want to go find the previous state complaints on your website about extended school year. But let's look at this one that was from this year, and it's from Academy School District 20. And I used to do some advocacy work for this in this district. So here's your decision. It gives an introduction to, what the situation was, the time period. If you file state complaints, you can only go back 1 year. Here's the summary. And like I said, you can see the regulations that are cited here. And so the issue here was failed to properly implement students' IEP. And then these are the, I guess I could highlight this so you can see it better. These are the regulations from IDEA you can use to support that. And then there were some other ones. Here's failed to educate student in the least restrictive environment. And again, they give that. So if your complaint is about your child not being in the least restrictive environment, these would be some federal regulations that you could look up, and then you could quote that, use that in your complaint that you're filing. So then they go down to the decision. And it looks like there was another one. They'll have finding of facts. They'll have background information about the student. These are the allegations that the parents made against the district. And talking about some evidence, the contents of the IEP. And I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster. Implementation of the IEP, because that was one of the things in the complaint. So this is 19 pages long. So close your eyes. Don't get dizzy. I'm going to try and go kind of to the end here where you see. So then this is a good part to read, is the conclusions of law. So this is according to, the state complaint investigator, but they're basing it on the findings of fact. And you can kind of go to the end. These violations resulted in a denial of FAPE. So the conclusion for allegation 1 is founded for the parent. The school district did violate it. And then they talk about some more about how you're supposed to implement it, have it be accessible. So I think the point is, without going through all 19 pages, is that you can find golden nuggets that you can use in your advocacy. So I encourage you to go forth, and if you need your magnifying glass, look for some goodies that are on your State Department Special Ed website, and let me know in the comments. Come back here in this thread and let us know what were some of the things that you found for your state that you could use, so you have a little bit of the upper hand when you walk into that IEP meeting. So thank you for being here with us live and on the replay. In a couple weeks, I have a special return guest. And I don't know if I should tell you the initials. I think if I tell you the initials, it will give it away. So keep your eyes peeled. Make sure you follow this the Art of Advocacy Facebook page, and I'll be revealing some hints about who our guest is going to be in a couple of weeks. So I'm Charmaine Tanner. I'm passionate about supporting parents to make sure that their child is safe, happy, and learning every day beside their classmates in the general ed classroom. So until we meet again, take care.